So if you're familiar with my factions content, you guys probably know the phrase problems always, which seems to be the case with this upcoming standalone multiplayer game that Naughty Dog have been working on since forever. So according to what we knew before a few days ago, The Last of Us multiplayer had been in development for 4 years, maybe even more. What was supposed to be a complementary mode to The Last of Us Part 2, Naughty Dog grew ambitious and decided to make it its own game. Fast forward 4 years, and where are we? It was heavily rumored that The Last of Us Part 2 multiplayer, or the standalone multiplayer, was supposed to show at the PlayStation Showcase. It eventually didn't show, and some of the reasons we have now as to why it didn't. So it starts with Jason Schreier putting out an article on Bloomberg stating The Last of Us multiplayer faces setbacks at Sony, weaknesses were found in the game. It also continues on to say, Sony Group has slowed down development on upcoming multiplayer game and its long-running The Last of Us video game series as the creators reassess its quality and long-term viability according to the 4 people familiar with the project. A skeleton crew remains on the project while the company reevaluates the direction. While the game has not been cancelled, many of its developers have been moved on to other projects. So following requests for comment from Bloomberg, Naughty Dog put out a statement on Twitter, which I'm sure most of you guys have seen already. So let's look at this tweet that is essentially a response to this Bloomberg article, and not because us fans are not frustrated with waiting our entire lives for this next installment of the game. We know many of you have been looking forward to hearing more about our Last of Us multiplayer game. We're incredibly proud of the job our studio have done thus far. But as development has continued to realize what is best for the game is to give it more time. Our team will continue to work on the project as well as other games in development, including a brand new single player experience. We look forward to sharing more soon. But before I continue, I want us to look at why we find ourselves in this situation to begin with. So PlayStation is heavily investing in live service video gaming, and will be the next step for PlayStation and Sony. Live service video games are games designed to be monetized beyond their initial sales. So the things like microtransactions in games, things like the sale of the cosmetic items, battle passes, so that they make money, millions and millions of dollars, even after the game is initially released. So that was Sony's plan with The Last of Us multiplayer. So Sony / PlayStation, being the parent company of Naughty Dog, I think didn't have faith in what Naughty Dog were creating, because Naughty Dog are not really known for their multiplayer games and are known for their single player games. And I'm sure Naughty Dog has all the faith, or PlayStation has all the faith in Naughty Dog when it comes to the single player side of things. So what do? They hire Bungie to basically check on what Naughty Dog is working on and then give them a report on whether they think the game would work or not. But I have so many issues with that statement alone. I get it from a business standpoint. Obviously Bungie have been in the multiplayer scene way longer. They have a lot more experience in the multiplayer scene, but there's just so much wrong with doing that to begin with. So anyway, continuing with the article, as part of that push, it asked another one of its video game studios, Bungie, to evaluate the games across its portfolio. Bungie raised a couple of questions about The Last of Us multiplayer project's ability to keep players engaged for a long period of time, which led to the reassessment, which I have so many problems with, guys. I have so many problems with, but we'll get that back into that in a bit. So basically what happened was Bungie looked at its multiplayer project and decided it wasn't going to be a game that lasted for years and years. Maybe because it didn't have enough replay value, or it wasn't going to be a game that made enough money long term. Who knows? But Bungie thought it wasn't going to work as a long term live service game. So let me look at the problems I have with Sony, I guess, giving Bungie authority over Naughty Dog, and just basically saying that what they're working on is essentially trash. So what would Bungie know about what makes factions special? That's my first question. Let's look at what Bungie makes, right? Destiny 1 and 2, those are the most popular games, I guess. A Call of Duty paste, bullet sponge, space Viking shooter. What would they know about what makes Factions special, especially considering how grounded, how special Factions is? They're two very different games, and I guess, you know, you could argue that Bungie has more multiplayer experience, etc, but I just feel like this is a case of too many cooks spoiled the bride, right? Bungie would not see what makes Factions special, right? So my other question is, okay, so if Bungie's gonna oversee what Factions, or the next iteration of Factions, is supposed to be, are we gonna see a Factions that's more like Destiny, a more bullet sponge type, fast-paced game? No one wants that. No one from in their right mind that plays Factions wants a more fast-paced Call of Duty type game. There's so many replacements to Call of Duty. There's so many replacements to Destiny, Battlefield. So many games out there. Apex Legends, Titanfall. There's millions of those games out there. Ask anyone that's played Factions for a replacement for Factions, and they'll tell you that there's no replacement to Factions. That's how special it is. And I guess one of Bungie's arguments is that they wouldn't be able to keep players long enough. Look at how long Factions has lasted, right? Naughty Dog have tried the faster paced Uncharted games. Those all die within the first 2 years. Factions has been alive for nearly 10 years. Of course, it's not as popular as it used to be, but that's because it's not being updated. The devs stopped updating the game 6 years ago, but the game is still very much loved, very much populated. You know, that's their concern. Is the game going to be popular? It's still very much populated 10 years after its release. So why have any doubt that Naughty Dog would be able to make a game that has a populated game 10 years, even 5 years from its initial release, especially considering there's going to be a live service game, as Naughty Dog said, their most ambitious game, and still doubt them? It just doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, the last question I want to raise is this game actually cancelled, or is it delayed? And when can we see it if it's delayed? So if the game is delayed, we'll probably be looking at a late 2025 release, maybe even 2026. And if the game is cancelled, which it could be cancelled, but I don't think it would be cancelled forever, especially considering that the fact that Sony are heavily investing in this live service model, the Last of Us universe. They wouldn't want to, leave that out of the live service equation. So I think maybe if they cancel the game entirely, they'll probably start working on it when around about the time after they release The Last of Us Part 3, and The Last of Us Part 3 is probably 4 years away from release, so maybe an additional 6 to 7 years for The Last of Us Part 2 if it's cancelled now. And yeah, guys, it's I know it just sucks. It really does suck, but at the end of the day, yeah, Sony does what's best for their pocket, and they think this is their best decision. It just sucks. It honestly does. And I don't see any way of making Sony realize that we just want Factions too. Maybe start a couple of hashtags on Twitter, in a respectful manner. Just let them know that there's a demand for Factions, even if it's not going to be the gigantic game that they want it to be. But there are people out there that would buy their product, and they'll make their money, I guess. So yeah, guys, a bit of a sad video today, but it is what it is. So I hope you guys enjoyed the rest of your day, and yeah, I'll be back with another video sooner than you think. Peace and take care.